morning, everyone. I'm DeRionne Pollard, the proud president of Montgomery College. I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome you to this Facebook Live conversation where I'm getting to talk to another one of my favorite people in Montgomery County, Councilmember Riemer. Now, I want to make sure I get this correct. He is the chair, because I always say Fed, so I have to make sure I have the right name, chair of the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee. He also has been, I think, very groundbreaking and very influential in the county as we start thinking about workforce and the talent pipeline, and particularly the economic issues that are driving Montgomery County right now. I've invited him to have this dialogue with me. We talk about the talent pipeline and the workforce issues of Montgomery County, so welcome.
Thank you so much.
Delighted to have you
really
here.
Glad to be here.
And that he also came in his appropriate purple and gray from Montgomery College. We're delighted. Now, we are here at our Rockville campus in our state-of-the-art science building, but this particular lab, this is our digital circuit lab, and this is actually a facility that we are so proud of because this particular room is really used as a part of our capstone for our engineering program. These students, we have the largest transfer engineering program in the country, where we have about 1,400 students enrolled in engineering programs who will leave Montgomery College and go directly into work in some cases, but these students are also highly prized and sought after, and they transfer to four-year engineering programs across the country. Our faculty, who are superb, have negotiated articulation agreements where our students are coming directly in to those programs at junior level, and what's even more important, they are prepared based on the work they have here, because we work in and live in a county that has supported education. So we're excited to be here. Now, this little gadget here, I have to tell you, because I'm afraid to touch it because this laboratory, I don't want to break anything in it, but this particular gadget is an Altera, I want to make sure I say this, Field Programmable Gate Array Educational Board. Now, I understand this is something that's quite envious in many engineering labs, but this little part here, this microchip, is very important because these are things that that power our cell phones and other things in our automobiles and other things. And this particular device is used to test it to make sure the students have programmed it well. Okay. So for us, this is representative of the work we do for the work that is now and of the future, because as we know, technology is changing the way we think about the nature of work, the way we engage in work. So we're excited to be a part of that. So we thought this location is perfect for this conversation. And my first question for you, we think a lot about the changing impact of work because of technology. Yeah. And I know that you talk to a lot of businesses, you're well read on the issues. What are some of your insights about how the impact of technology is affecting the workplace and, more importantly, talent development in Montgomery County?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So glad to be here. Dr. Pollard, you are such a leader for this county on education and economic development, and you know, your work here since you've been here, it's been how many years now? 7 or 8?
My 10th year. I know. When did that happen?
It has been just really important. I think you present to us and to the region and to the world, you know, what this county really is all about. And the programs that you're building are so strategic. So I'm really, really proud to be able to support your work and the college and the students. To take a step back, you know, around the country, regions that are growing and are thriving, they're growing because they have technology-fueled sectors. It's really technology that is changing the pace of growth, and it's not just even tech companies, but hotel companies or even agriculture. All of how they work and how they do their work and the efficiencies, how employees do the work is being changed in a very quick manner by technology. So the importance of training the next generation to succeed with technology is crucial. But as a county, Montgomery County, you know, we have to be competing in technology-driven economic growth, or we're not going to be generating the jobs that we need to support our community. So as you look around the country, regions like Boston, the Bay Area, Austin, Denver, these are like thriving metropolitan areas that have technology-fueled or technology-driven economies. Montgomery County needs to be in that game, and we are. That has been a part of our story. You know, we have a lot of technology that spins out of our federal labs, for example, a lot of our biotech and science. We have a lot of defense-related technology companies, but we need to do a lot better, or we're going to fall behind. And even within the Washington region, I think our students are probably very familiar with the number of jobs that are available in the Northern Virginia area, where you have, you know, hundreds of thousands of jobs, a lot of them in technology. as opposed to Montgomery County where there's fewer. And so Montgomery College is a key part of positioning this county as a place where companies say we can grow here because we can hire here because the workers are here. And so whether it's entrepreneurs or staff, it's the education system that is going to churn that out.
You really are hitting upon something to me. I think about this idea of an ecosystem, because when you mentioned those large cities that you mentioned, and you talked about the technology as certainly being the driver of their economic development platform or strategy, but tightly coupled with education. Are there other characteristics in these regions that would speak to you in terms of how you create that ecosystem that produces the technology-driven economic development coupled with that education? There's got to be some other elements,
Absolutely.
right?
I mean, education is a key part of it, and often it's university-driven innovation, right? So you have professors at Stanford University and graduate students that are coming up with ideas, and then investors kind of flock there to identify those inventions and then help them turn into companies. That's how Google was created. You see that a lot. New York, for example, brought in Cornell University to New York City to fuel their need for workers in the IT space. They wanted to position New York, Mayor Bloomberg wanted to position New York as a leader in IT and technology, and he identified a gap in the education offering of the area to produce that. So what you see in the characteristics are, investment dollars like capital and educational institutions, and then entrepreneurs and risk takers. All working together, and I think we have a lot of those elements. So we're succeeding in those areas, but we could do more. We could do a lot more, and if we want our job growth to get to the point that we really need it to be, because as federal spending is slowing down, and we can't rely upon the job growth in the federal sector that traditionally has powered this county. We need to have a strong private sector. If we're going to do that, then it's going to be by building collaborations with Montgomery College, USG, University of Maryland, federal labs, the private sector, and the county government to really build that ecosystem to thrive.
That's such a great point. One of the things that we spend a lot of time at Montgomery College doing is actually listening to employers. I know that's actually a special skill set that you have, because I know that you spend a lot of time listening to small and medium and large businesses telling you about the needs. We've been doing a lot of work with folks like Amazon, hearing what their needs are. I know you have Shapiro and Duncan, a mechanical HVAC company here in the county, and we've also been doing some really good work with Amazon regarding AWS, and then also with Google, doing some conversations with them as well. So we're really trying to be very deliberate about how we start to do what it is you're saying, and what are the workforce needs here. One of the things we know is that we prepare people here to step into the workforce at many different levels and many different skill sets that they may need. What are you hearing from employers about what skill sets they want to hear, want to see workers come into their companies with, both entry level and maybe as they move into further points of their career?
Well, let's talk about the Amazon example, because I think it's so important, and I think it helps explain how communities are going to thrive in the future. Amazon has transformed cloud computing. They invented the web services platforms for themselves because they were getting so much web traffic, and they built these massive data system, server farms, and they could serve massive amounts of data traffic on the cloud. Then they realized, hey, we could lease some of this space out to companies that need to run cloud platforms. So they started to do that, and then suddenly all these companies start signing up with them, and then they realize they don't have enough employees who are trained in how to service their cloud platform to actually continue to expand. And so they reached out through educational institutions. Montgomery College is one of the partnering institutions to provide a degree program. And the degree program trains students in the Amazon cloud platform, but also Apple and Google. There's many competing cloud platforms. So that is an example of a company saying, we have a workforce shortage. We look down the road, we're not going to be able, our company won't be able to grow without more talent. And so how do you create it? You provide curriculum, you partner with an educational institution, and you get it going. That is that's a very high-profile example of something that is already happening, and in a way has been happening for a long time. For example, your HVAC tech programs, right? That's a similar Shapiro and Duncan. That's a similar kind of workforce strategy. What we need to do, I think, is really just step that up. For example, Montgomery County, we have a growing biomanufacturing sector. So these are not manufacturing drugs and pills, traditional pharma manufacturing. They're manufacturing like live cells that are, the people, I don't even know how it works, but what they're making are living organisms that are part of therapies.
Yes.
That is an extremely complex manufacturing system. And there is it's a growth sector for the county, and it's a huge opportunity for our educational institutions to partner to provide the workforce. And those are not necessarily PhD level workforce, those are skilled technicians. This lab is a lab that will produce skilled technicians. It's similar.
Yes,
So if we want a sector like that to be able to grow here, which we do, we want to be the vaccine capital of the world here in Montgomery County. We want to be one of the biomanufacturing capitals of the world right here in Montgomery County. It's going to be because our educational institutions, Montgomery College, University of Shady Grove, are able to meet the future workforce demand.
I love what you're saying on this idea of a stratified workforce, because oftentimes when we think about the workforce, we think about the people who are actually the geneticists who are finding the next cure for the cancer, which is an important role you have to have. But for every one of those, you need the technicians who are supporting them and actually doing the work in the laboratory. You need people who are also going to be ensuring that they have the appropriate supplies and understanding the business function of it, the procurement issue. So there's a complexity to that oftentimes is lost when we think about economic and workforce development.
You're so right, and I think that we need to be able to translate that better to the general public, because I think people here, when we talk about having technology-driven economic growth, they think, well, that's only going to benefit those who whose parents were scientists and they have PhDs, and they're going to. There is a lot of inequality in our system, and that's a problem. That's a very big problem. But there are most of the jobs will be more in that middle tier. I mean, we're talking about even jobs that don't require four-year degrees. And they can be good-paying jobs right here in Montgomery County. But certifications, badging, all of that. So it'll be a lifelong process. But whether it is the skilled technician on the factory floor of the biomanufacturing facility, or it is the folks building that facility, servicing the HVAC, which is an intense demand in a biomanufacturing facility. Climate control essential. So there are jobs that come through at every level. And what we need in the county is more dynamism and more generation of that kind of economic opportunity, so that we get jobs at every level. But
I love that. And one of the things that I also hear from employers is that they also want to have people who can think, who can communicate, who can value working in teams, who understand the beautiful part of diversity and understanding that teams grow when you have people who have the ability to think and talk and look different than each other. So my next question to you, and I'm going to come right back to, because we're getting some questions on Facebook. I'm a little biased. I had a couple of degrees in English. And I often, while we are very much about technology, if you don't have somebody who can explain that technology to you and write about it and communicate effectively about it, it used to be called soft skills, which I'm kind of like, I can't stand the concept. I love these ideas of power skills. That's power foundational skills. What do you hear from employers about these types of things in terms of these soft skills? And what do you think are, how do you build an economy that has people who can do the technology, but also people who can think effectively and write effectively about them?
I mean, as a fellow liberal arts major.
I know, that was my invitation.
Thank you. Art history was one of my passions in college. But I came to that with a personal conviction that a community thrives when you have jobs. That was growing up in Oakland, California, a community that didn't have jobs, and the impact, the division of opportunity was so profound and it's such a powerful experience that I wanted to try to tackle that. But my personal passion is also around persuasion and communication and those kinds of skills. You know, one thing I would say is that Montgomery College is the future of this country. The student body, the experience that students have in a educational institution like this are the kinds of the student experience is the experience that employers that want to reach a global market, need. And we saw that actually with the Amazon competition.
Yeah.
What Amazon wanted was to be able to tap into a workforce that would be competent in a global context.
Yes.
And if there was ever an educational institution that it presents a global context, it's Montgomery College. So that part I think is really exciting. And this county, what I love about this county is that people come here from all over the world with a lot of people are here because they're involved in something that has kind of a public purpose, whether it's in the private sector because you're in the bio and science related industries, or in the public sector, or the nonprofit sector, or the educational. All of these that is substantially the economic base of this county, and it makes such an interesting community of people who have a kind of a purpose-driven mindset, and that's what I think employers want. Those are those skills that you want people who have a vision of what the world needs to be. But yeah, I really encourage students to study things that they're passionate about, and above all else, develop writing skills. Communications in a lot of jobs, not every job, but in a lot of jobs, I see this over and over. What really matters is, can you write? If you can write, you'll succeed in any. There really is no. The barriers will not be in front of you. If you need to work on your writing, then work on your writing, because that will determine. It'll just open a lot of doors for you. I'll say that.
So thank you, my fellow liberal arts graduate. It's very important that we talk about that, because sometimes it gets lost. So we have quite a few questions coming in. I want to ask you here that I think are really interesting. Nancy N says, how do we ensure businesses are employing inclusive diversity hiring practices? Do we need training for employers and county organizations to do that?
Oh, that's a great question.
You got some good ones coming in.
Yeah. Well, we need close integration of our employers with our educational institutions. For example, our employers need to understand our student body here, and they need to follow the law. So, there are important equal employment opportunity laws and protections that we have to enforce. But I think that we always need to help our employers understand just the talent and the skill level of our workforce, and understand that in today's global economy, that if your workforce isn't culturally competent or just competent to interact with customers and clients that look like the world, then you're going to be targeting a very narrow market. Your company's not going to succeed.
Roberta asked something very interesting. How can we convince employers to hire entry-level people and commit to, quote, growing their own people, rather than always wanting someone with multiple years of experience? Because we see this in academia as well. Joe retires, and Joe's been at the college for 35 years, and we go out and say we need another Joe, without realizing that Joe was the investment of 35 years.
Yeah.
And Joe came at the end of his career as who he is, but trying to find someone to fill that may not be the same type of skill set we need, or more importantly, how do we invest in someone to grow? How do we incent companies to do that?
Well, I think that's so important. I think one of our challenges is that companies and here in the area have PhD, level workers that come from all over the world, and that's a strength for us. But we have so many young people here in this community who we need to get going on the path to those jobs ourselves. Sorry, the question again was how do we convince employers to hire
entry-level workers?
Yeah, I think apprenticeships and internships. We need to have a culture of support for apprenticeships and internships in the county. And apprenticeships and internships are quite different, but I'm here today because I was an intern. I was an intern at a public policy organization in Washington, D.C., and that opened the door to me. employers need to make that part of their mission to cultivate the next generation of talent, and I think that would go a long way.
It's interesting. Quadrant said, "How do we get our skilled non-degree employees the proper compensation?" Because it seems to be that unless you have the degree, oftentimes that may not necessarily be necessary for the job you're in, but we have this kind of elitism around the degree. We say we need to do that. So I think part of that is how we start to translate skills versus educational attainment, or the degree that is the credential. Because I think I just saw a great video. The vice president for global talent for IBM did a great video. He actually talked about how IBM is completely restructured using AI. They're hiring and professional development pathways in their organizations, where entry-level credential used to be a bachelor's degree, and they're changing that because they recognize that's not getting them what they need, but they're also compensating appropriately as a result of that. They need skills, not the degree. So I think it's going to be an interesting conversation us in the county as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need to get to the point where we have a more refined identification of skills that have been developed by a student or an employee, so that if you did a 6-week internship in a technology environment, you came out of that with specific skills that are marketable, that are relevant, even if you don't necessarily have a degree that corresponds to that. So I think getting to the point of more certificates and kind of shorter processes to become certified and credentialed, and developing credential systems that are more layered or nuanced and finely grained, so that that an employee presents an array of qualifications, not just one degree, and that's more transparent or visible to a hiring employer. I see that this person has this combination of 6 or 8 essentially credentials, which are not, so it's not obscured by whether you have a degree or not.
And how you then demonstrate your outcomes. And I joined LinkedIn not too long ago because I was fascinated. I had a friend ask me, "How do you find a job?" And I was like, wow, let's talk about that. So we were going through this process, and I told her about LinkedIn, and I thought, let me become more familiar with it. And I thought it's very interesting, this whole LinkedIn environment where people endorse you for certain credential or skill sets, and then you also have to demonstrate your ability to be able to do these things. So it's a very different environment to simply saying, oh, I have a master's degree in X, Y, or Z. But you need some people to co-sign that you actually can be able to do this work. And it's interesting, it's the same thing though we see with our kids. I think if we really want to be thinking about economic development and workforce of the future, we should be looking to how our children think about influencers, how our children think about their badges they earn on their gaming devices, and how you move up. Oh, this person's a 99. I heard somebody refer to another. That's a 99. They knew what that meant. There's a whole different language than those of us who are doing sometimes the hiring actually able to actually know what that means. And I think your point illustrates that. Let me make a pivot, because I think I probably have about 5 minutes left on this. I want to ask you a couple personal questions, if you don't mind. Thinking about 2020, and we just heard the other day about Kobe Bryant's death, and lots of things that people are experiencing in emotion. But one of the things that's been resonating with me, and that is that there's this thing that took off on Twitter yesterday about him being a girl dad. And my father is a girl dad. He's got 2 girls. But you and I, you're a boy dad, and I'm a boy mom. And there's something really different. And you're also a boy dad to beautiful children who are having to navigate a world that's very different than what you and I may have. What does it mean to you to be a boy dad? That wasn't on my list.
Wow, that wasn't on your list.
No.
I mean, first of all, being a dad is, and
I wish you could see your face.
Is the thing that makes me happiest. And I wish I could just spend all my time. I don't think my kids would appreciate that, but it's such a different world that they live in, and I don't know. Gosh, I don't even know exactly how to answer that question, but being a dad is the greatest experience I've ever had, and for me, family comes first. And I had to be mentored as a young man before I ever had family. That family comes first, because there was a time in my life when I didn't necessarily know that or expect that, but I had mentors who said, "Now, whatever you do, Hans, remember, family comes first." And it stuck with me, and then it conditioned me as to how I began to approach my spouse and my family in the future. But I don't know. As a dad right now, my kids are so cool. They're so much cooler than I ever was as a kid, and I love to try to keep up with their fashion sense. And I bought my first pair of Nike sneakers I bought in like probably 40 years the other day. You know, just trying vainly to get my kid to say, "That's pretty cool, Dad." And my son said, "Those shoes are fire." So hey,
yeah. Well, we don't, and they don't call them sneakers; they call them kicks.
There
So you got a pair of new kicks. That's what I learned. I learned this too. Yeah.
It's it's amazing to me. I can learn from being a parent.
Yeah.
I can learn I have my children. My son's doing music has taught me things about how to manage my time and the difference that spending even like 15 or 20 minutes on something consistently, repetitively will do for you. So yeah, it's fun.
So January 2020, what are you most excited about as you think about this new year?
Well, I am so thrilled about the work that I'm doing around technology transfer in our federal labs. You know, we don't have like Harvard or MIT here. We have Montgomery College and USG, and we have NIH, and we have National Institute of Standards of Technology, and we have the FDA. And I think we could be doing so much more to link up with those institutions for whether to pull out inventions and technologies that will drive the private sector growth, or to you know, integrate with our educational partners. So I am just really excited. I feel like I have kind of thrown back the curtain on something here that is huge and is ultimately really our superpower as a community. We have some of the world's most powerful research institutions right in our front yard, and we could do so much more to you know, to benefit from that. So I'm really excited about that, and housing issues. I am hopeful that this year we're going to be able to enact some changes that will really move the needle to get the housing market going, because the housing market in this county has just dried up, and we have an affordability problem, and all of this investment that we make in young people to create the workforce of the future, if people can't afford to live here, they won't live here. And so we will be having a brain drain. And so we've got to meet that housing need.
I think your point is because it really is this idea of what's the quality of life we want to have in Montgomery County moving forward. And it isn't something that just appears magically. It's something we have to work for. It's something we have to be intentional about. It's something we have to create this ecosystem. I mentioned that earlier. There's a wonderful economist, he passed not too long ago, Tappan Monroe, and he did a book about looking at Silicon Valley. And he had 9 characteristics that created an environment that thrived for these types of communities you talked about. And he talked about education, he talked about economic and workforce development, he talked about effective leadership and the way that works. So we definitely have some of those components here. But then he also talked about quality of life issues, transportation. He talked about this idea that you're able to have parks and wellness and health in a way. So if we want to create this environment, we're going to have to be intentional about all those aspects that can really come together to lend itself to this type of space.
You're so right. I attended a conference here as the biotech. And I spent a lot of time talking to this leader in the sector. The first thing he said when he met me was, "Oh, Hans Riemer, I really appreciate that work you did around bike access, you know, bicycle issues." Because that's something that matters to him. So it all fits together. You're absolutely right.
Well, I want to thank you, Hans, Councilmember Riemer, for coming in and joining. Well, I always say that, but I want to be respectful to our audience as well, so they know. Hans Riemer is not only, I think, one of the brilliant minds we have happening in Montgomery County, and very fortunate to have you in leadership with our council, but more importantly, I think thinking very deeply about the future of Montgomery County intentionally. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to our next set of this. And to most of you all, I hope that you're having a great day and doing good stuff in the office as well at home, and look forward to seeing you next time. Be well.